Okay, so we're back with agonizing poetry night. So here's another one from Dale Ritterbush, and just in case you thought that every single thing that Dale wrote was or writes is utterly brutal. He actually writes very charming, sometimes quite funny poems, and he writes very meditative, beautiful poems about Vietnam. Not about the war, but about Vietnam, which he's gone back to, as many veterans have. Many veterans cannot; they just can't do it. But many veterans have, and that's another whole. Vietnam tourism has become a huge deal in itself. Anyway, okay, so later for that. So here, the title. Okay, I'll read it and then we'll come back. Right. So, winning hearts and minds. She clasps the child to her breast, cries as her hooch burns. Her husband fought back, lies there, upper butt stroke so hard it broke the phenolic stalk. Vengeance. A futile gesture. Spitting Betelgeuse into the wind. She has lost one son to the VC, another to an airstrike. She remembers the soft rain of dirt falling out of the sky. Sees his chest opened like a fruit, dug open with the nails and pulled apart, his organs glistening like a melon. She sobs, her eyes sing hate, her child, clutched tighter, cries above the flames. A Marine screams, "Shut the fuck up." A scrawny pig is shot and tossed on the flames. Rice burns, pops like a flare. She runs, tit flapping against her chest, falls against the hard luck of Vietnam. Okay, so again, we have a narrator. In all poetry, the narrator, as with a novel or a story, there is a narrator, right? I mean, the narrator isn't the poet. There's there's a narrator. There's a creation of the narrator inside the poem, and the poet may create a narrator who is the poet, but it's a tricky assumption to make. In the same way, that's a tricky assumption to make that the person who writes the story is also the main character in the story. It's like you wouldn't assume that. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the latest Quentin Tarantino. I'm assuming the Brad Pitt character is not actually Quentin Tarantino. So okay. So what we have is the initial title, which is ironic, right? And by now you understand much more the irony of calling, first of all, that winning hearts and minds was, as Johnson said, was the policy that he had gone to Vietnam to pursue. That he had sent the troops to Vietnam to pursue the winning of hearts and minds. And the winning of hearts and minds was considered to be the feeling was, this was sort of this kind of bargain basement anthropology, that if you get the Vietnamese to sign on to an American worldview, they would join in and happily fight the North Vietnamese to a standstill. Okay. And so then we have this picture of what's happened. So it's another search and destroy mission, basically. The village is being burned. And so what this woman has left is a child, because the husband who fought back, well, we don't know what that means. I mean, did he not go down fast enough? Did he not drop his knees fast enough? Did he, did he hit somebody with a rake the way one of the men does and one of the farmers does in the Michael Casey poem about the tracks in Vietnam. A bummer. What does fight back mean? I mean, it probably doesn't mean that he had a gun and aimed it at the soldiers. Lies there, and so he's just been hit with the rifle stock. So the phenolic stock is the material that the rifle butt is made out of, and it's like killing a person with a piece of plastic. You have to hit somebody to kill somebody with one of these rifles. You really have to hit them hard. It's kind of like killing somebody with an aluminum bat. I mean, they didn't have any weight at all. It was not unusual in World War II to have people murdered by a rifle stock because the stocks were wooden and they were heavy pieces of wood. I mean, they really they carried they literally had a lot of clout. But these stocks of the M16 in Vietnam was very light, so an upper butt stroke. So basically, the person just would have hit the guy with a stroke presumably to the chin and killed him so hard it broke the phenolic stock, so it actually breaks the rifle stock. So somebody was just enraged, with this, and obviously got close enough to club this guy to death. Okay, and then it's a futile gesture, and these dashes we sort of have to interpret. Are they pauses, which is how I read them. You may see them differently. And it's always good to read a poem out loud. If you're like, well, what does this mean? It's like, read it out loud and try different things on. You're like, oh, I see this is connected to that. Oh, okay, I'm going to read it out loud. So you can always read it out loud. Try underlining different words, see where you'd put the emphasis if you're going to read it out. Okay, so then Betelgeuse, this is a thing that's particular to really a great deal of Southeast Asia. The betel nut is a mild stimulant, and it's chewed by many people. At the time, it was chewed by the farmers. And it's particular because it turns the teeth black. I mean, the serious black. It doesn't make them gray or something like that. It turns like people have black teeth, and they're just stained. They're not bad. They're just stained by the Betelgeuse. But you have to spit the juice out. It's like, as I say, it's a stimulant. It's a futile gesture, he says, spitting Betelgeuse, basically, which is how I read the dash here, like spitting Betelgeuse into the wind. Like you spit into the wind, it's like you're not going to defeat the wind by spitting into it. And then there's this little sort of recap about who this woman is. She's lost one son to the VC, so presumably one son was taken away by the VC to fight and died. Another to an airstrike. And here there's a reversal of images, and Dale is very good about this. She remembers the soft rain of dirt falling out of the sky. So it's the soft rain we expect. The soft rain of it's a sort of pastoral image. There was a soft rain, but it turns out to be dirt because the airstrike literally lifts to potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of pounds of dirt into the air, which then comes back down as a fine mist. And so it actually rains dirt if you're underneath the strike, but you haven't been killed by it. So this things have been turned over. The natural order of things has been turned over. Dirt is falling from the sky. And then there's this whole exploration of the body as a piece of fruit. And many fruits are nervously, make us nervous about the body. Watermelon, certainly. There are a number of the pomegranate is, is just so strange looking inside. It has those, that sort of what look like muscles and, flesh. And there's white, looks like bones inside the red flesh of the pomegranate seeds. So a number of the tropical fruit have these very dramatic insides, there's bright yellow and it's not like an apple, which is not very dramatic. Chob apple, sees the chest open like a fruit. So, and then it's dug open with the nails, and so the nails here would be the nails that are in the bomb. And if you remember that I showed you these videos of these weapons where it isn't just rockets that have nails in them, but high explosive also. So an airstrike also, there are rounds that are anti-personnel, designed as anti-personnel rounds, and it's a standard shell or bomb shape, but is full of basically BBs or ball bearings that can be actually quite big, and they burst open. When these burst open, it's high explosive. They drive the ball bearings out, say, to 1,000 yards, and everything is just a scythe. I mean, everything is just sliced down in that region. So this is the kind of thing that happens. So this person's just been pulled apart, and the image of the fruit then becomes a melon. His organs glisten like a melon, so it's all wet. And then we're back to her. And what has she got? And all she's got is her kid, and her kid is screaming. And you think, okay, well, at least she has her kid, right? Her kid survived. She survived. So the mother and child are alive. And that's a big deal for the West, because at least the women and children weren't killed. The two sons, the grown sons were, and the husband, but fair game. They're fair game because after all, they're men. Okay, so they get to be killed. So her child, Clutchtiger, cries because she's being held too tightly, and it's this sort of apocalyptic, the flames. And then there are friendly Americans, Marines scream, "Shut the fuck up!" So, and then there's more of the search and destroy. So the only things they have, I mean, these are broken. These are peasants who are living on they're very sort of, they're just scraping by, which is putting it mildly. So a pig, which would be incredibly important to the family's well-being, is just killed and thrown on the flames. And rice, which is so hard to grow, basically is just burned. So there's a terrible destruction here. I mean, there will be nothing left for her. And she will not be transported. I mean, the idea was that you then transported the Vietnamese elsewhere, resettled them, but that wasn't necessarily going to give you a chance to survive either. So it's not good. And so she runs. And what's particularly, I think, violent about the image as he says, tit flapping against her chest, is that the suggestion or the intimation that maybe her milk has run dry. Maybe even though she's a nursing mother, she's dry, she's empty, and the kid is going to die too. And that's it. It's just like a bad day in Vietnam, as Michael Casey would say, a bummer. Okay, so a tough one to go with the Wallace Terry stories about the Bloods.